Room is a persistence library part of the Android Jetpack. We can save data in a local database using Room. Room library have three components. First one is entity. Second, data access objects. And the third is database class. Let's start with a new project. Choose an empty activity. Give a name for the application. Let's wait until everything is ready. We have mainly 4 steps to complete. First one, add dependency. Second, add entity. Third, create DAO. And last is create database. So let's start with adding dependency. Open the module level Gradle file. Copy the latest version of dependencies from Android developer page. Paste in dependencies section. We are using Kotlin annotation processing tool. So add Kotlin capped in plugins section. Sync project and wait to finish. Our next step is to create entity. For creating entity, add a Kotlin data class into the project. Select the data class. Name it as table1. Now the data class table1 is created. Annotate the class with @entity annotation for make it as room entity. Each entity must have a unique primary key. So let's make a field as primary key by adding @primary key annotation before the field name. Use @column info annotation for adding other fields required for our database table. The database table we created will now look something like this. An entity represents a table in the database. Each field in the entity class represents a column in the table. Now we finished our entity, let's go to data access objects. The data access object or DAO is an object that provides access to an underlying database. Each DAO contains methods for accessing database. Usually we define a DAO as an interface. So let's add a Kotlin class file. Select interface. Name it as PersonDAO. We must always annotate our DAO class with @DAO. Now let's define methods required for interacting with our database. First we define a method for inserting data into database. Parameter for an insert method must be an instance of a room data entity class. The @insert annotation is used for the methods to insert data into the table. Now we define another method for retrieving data. Use @query annotation to query data from database. The @query annotation allow us to write SQL statements. Here we are writing a query for returning a list of all entries from the table 1. Now DAO also finished, our next is database class. Add a new Kotlin class into the project. Database class is the main access point to our local data. And it must be an abstract class and extends room database. Annotate the class with @database and list the all table names, that is entities, associated with the database. The version number required if we change the schema of our table later. the database class must define an abstract method for each DAO class. Has no arguments. And returns an instance of the DAO class. That's all. Now we created a simplest form of a room database class. This is just for demo purpose only, otherwise we have to follow singleton design pattern for instantiating database object. Now we define the data entity, the DAO, and the database object. Let's see how to use these for database operations. Open main activity. Now we are writing all of our logic in main activity, as this just a demo only. First of all, we have to create an instance of the database. Use Room Database Builder for creating an instance of the database. Give application context database class name and a name for database as parameter. Now we have to define our user interface. Here I am adding 3 edit text and a button for giving input for insert data. Our UI is now looks like this. The 3 edit texts are used to give inputs for corresponding columns in the table. Now we initialize our views inside onCreate method of main activity. Set onClickListener to the button. Get the values from edit texts to corresponding 3 variables. Now we can use the abstract methods from the database class to get an instance of DAO. As the database operations are I/O operations, we cannot perform on main thread. So we call the DAO methods from a coroutine. We use this instance of DAO for inserting data into database. Call the insertPerson method of DAO, giving our 3 variables as arguments. Now all set. Let's run our app. Open the database inspector. There we can see live updates of our database. Give some values for ID, name, and age. Press the Save button. Now we can see the database is updated. Let's insert one more data. That's all. Now we have some values in our database. Let's check how we retrieve data using SQL query. So we need one more button and a text view for displaying our data. Now this is our UI. Go to main activity. Initialize newly added views. Let's add an onClickListener for the Get button. Get the list of all data into a variable using the getAll method in our DAO. Now we are running in background thread. We cannot update the text view from here. So run on UI thread is used for append the text into text view. Let's run our app. Press the Get button. Now we can see all the data in database displayed in text view. Let's add one more data. Press Get button. Now we can see the new data is inserted. This is very basic form of room database just for demo purpose only. It's always recommended to use the database class use singleton pattern and use all business logic out of the main activity. Thanks for watching.